the relief that has come in for the real estate sector. Now, as the government moves an amendment to provide that relief for realty buyers under the LTCG scheme, what essentially has happened is that for houses that have been purchased before the 23rd of July, which is when the FM made that budget speech, so for those properties, now you have the option of choosing between the old and the new regime. The old regime being 20% with indexation and the new regime, of course, being 12.5% without indexation. We have with us Boman Irani, MD at LTCG. We'll have Anuj Puri, Chairman at ANAROCK, Property Consultants in just a bit as well. Actually, Anuj is with us now. And we have Himanshu, Parekh, partner, KPMG India. Let me open with the tax expert first, because it seems that, there's complete tax clarity. Himanshu, just come in over there. Now there's relief, and I don't know if you managed to run some models since the budget, because some of the calculations that we were doing were showing that if your property has given at least a 10% sort of annual appreciation, then you were better off in the new regime, even without indexation. What do you make of this amendment, and what do you think will be the impact on the home buyer?
So, Surabhi, good morning. If you look at the regime which was prevalent prior to the Finance Bill 2024, we had a 20% rate of tax applicable on long-term capital gains arising from transactions involved in real estate with an indexation benefit. What the Finance Bill proposed to do was to reduce the rate of tax from 20% to 12.5%, but they withdrew the indexation benefit. Now, this came as a big shock or bolt from the blue for various individual taxpayers, because they were much better off under the old regime as compared to the proposed regime under the Finance Bill. And as a result of which, several representations were made to the Finance Minister. And I think in a very, very welcome move, what has now been clarified is that as far as taxpayers are concerned, and we are talking about individuals and HUFs, in respect of all transactions involving land and building, which have been procured prior to 23rd July 2024, they'll now have an option to pay tax at 12.5% without indexation, or pay tax at 20% with indexation, whatever is more beneficial to them. So to my mind, this is a very, very welcome development, Surabhi.
Himanshu, just to understand, is there a rule of thumb that you folks came up with? Like, I remember even in the income tax regime, the old and in the new, we had that cutoff that if your total subsidies or the total relief is above a certain threshold, then you're better off. So again, I'm asking the same question, that some of the calculations that I did with experts said that you need to have a lot of appreciation in your property. If it's 10% per year, then you're better off even without indexation. Any such thumb rule?
No, the calculation that we had undertaken at our end was that if the property was older than about 7 to 8 years, right, then you are better off under the old regime. And if the property was purchased within the last 7 to 8 years, then you are better off under the new regime. Now you have best of the both worlds going forward, assuming that this proposed amendment goes through.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that. Well, let's get in Boman Irani as well of LTCG into the conversation. Hi, Boman. Good morning, and thanks a lot for joining in. Well, do you believe this is good news? Will this help future sales? And also, if you could tell us, when they say their property is acquired on 23rd of July, what do they mean? Does it mean possession, registration, or does it mean booking?
Hi, Nigel. Thank you very much for having me on your show. I kind of concur with most of the stuff that Himanshu has already said. And I think it's a great move. The moment you give options in the hands of a consumer, they always feel a little more empowered. And this is a great move. I think a lot of, asks from around the country have been made by various MPs also asking for this reversal and allowing for indexation to take place. With regards to the question that you asked, 23rd July being the cutoff date, I would presume having a clear-cut registered document would make sure that you're absolute, you're with the proof that says that you've acquired the property. You definitely don't need possession of it, but I'm not sure of what they would make of it if it was only a booking made on that day.
Okay, got that, gentlemen. Morning. Anuj, I think, this shows the government is listening, right? I mean, I think that's the bigger message. Because I think if there's one thing which was causing a lot of angst, especially to the middle class, it was this. And there was so much hue and cry around it. And very quickly, the government's come back and given that option, I think, as Boman says, empowering, giving both options. I mean, not this or that. Anything you'd like to add and how you see it and the implications for the sector?
And I would absolutely concur on what you're saying is that, it is such a pleasant news that the government has listened to what the middle class is saying and immediately came up. And I think it is also to allay some of the fears. Because if you look at it, as Himanshu said, if the properties are bought recently, in the last 7-8 years, actually you are better off in the new regime. So what government has done is they have given benefit to both those who are buying in the new, in less than 8 to 9 years. If you bought the property, then in the new regime, you are better off on the taxation. If you've got the older property, and that is where the middle class was largely. What we discovered is post-COVID, the middle class do want to upgrade that property. They want bigger, better, more open space, more community living, more infrastructure. As a result of it, they want to sell the old property and then move to a newer property. And we discovered over the last 2-3 weeks since the announcement of the budget, there was a nervousness in that middle class to say is that now that we are going to sell this property, would our tax go up? And hence, our inability to buy the new property, given that there is going to be more tax implication. I think with this, that the government has come up, this is beautiful because one, it allays the fear. Second is for the middle class, it is the best thing. And third, for the property market, it continues to remain buoyant and, continues to go ahead the way it was without any sort of speed bumps coming in.
Anuj, just to take a point forward and maybe quick 30 seconds answers from both Boman and you on this. So we've discussed now everything before 23rd of July. There's an option. It's a wonderful, empowered regime. Now, for properties that will be purchased in the future, anything that's getting bought after the budget, where you have to, come down to the reality of 12.5% tax, but without indexation. Boman, what happens over there? Because again, I come back to the central question that it appears that you need to have substantial appreciation in your real estate property for the 12.5% to still be beneficial, even without the indexation. Is this going to curb speculator demand?
I maintain what I'd said earlier, that basically a 12.5% tax on your capital gains will actually encourage more investments in real estate. It will simplify the way people look at this asset class, and having indexations up to the point, they've grandfathered it up to 23rd of July, which is great. I think it serves both ends and everybody is happy as of right now.
Okay.
Boman, just to clarify, just to press on Surabhi's point, if you buy a new property, right, the rate is 12.5% now. So taxation is not 20, it's 12.5. So it is possible. It is positive, especially if you sell it within the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, where indexation doesn't add up or rather pile up, right? So for investor demand, it is better in that sense, Boman.
Absolutely right. For investors, this is a welcome move. As far as people who are using the property for their own, homes, etc., this is generally a long-term purchase, 15 to 20 years, at which point of time the property would have appreciated substantially. And even then, I believe that the simplicity of being able to calculate just that 12.5% really works as an upper rather than a downer for most of the people.
All right, we'll leave it there, gentlemen, and we can sort of dive in greater detail through the course of the day. But thank you very much for joining us quickly with your perspectives. Boman, Anuj, Himanshu, thank you very much for being here on CNBC TV 18.